Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of My History in Vinyl. Today we are going to be talking about... What are you doing?
It's a new turntable.
We have a few turntables already.
Yeah, you do, but this one's mine.
Well, what is it?
It's a Fluence RT85.
Really?
Yeah, I saved like $25 on it.
How'd you manage that?
I was one of the first 100 customers to use the offer code Robinson. They're taking like $25 off the RT82, RT83, RT84, and the RT85 in every color. So I got the RT85. The code's good for like the next 30 days, so I thought, why not?
How was I not aware of this?
I don't know. They're sponsoring this episode.
They are?
Yeah, you should probably thank them.
Jeez. So for this episode, I have grabbed an album that likely needs no introduction. That is to say, if you were listening to the radio at all in the early 2000s, chances are you are intimately familiar with this particular record, and that is none other than John Mayer's Room for Squares. Now, the reason this is in my collection is because it is the first record that I bought after having moved from Colorado to Los Angeles, and I purchased it at the famous or infamous Amoeba Records. It was my first purchase, and I bought it because I had just kind of come into possession of a new-to-me Technics 1200 Mark II, I think, Mark II deck. And I was starting over kind of my record collection at that time. I only had maybe a handful of albums, and so this was one of, if not, no, this was the first purchase that I made. And at that time I was just starting out, or had been in college for a little while, and obviously bought it with student loan money, which is always sound financial advice. But this album from John is actually not his first. I think for a lot of people it is considered his first, and I don't fault people for thinking that, but he did have an independent release in Inside Wants Out. That was the name of the album, the Inside Wants Out, which is pretty much this record, albeit largely acoustic. And I believe it was off Inside Wants Out that they went back into the studio, re-recorded it, and you have Room for Squares as we know it today. And I have to say, I think I played this record ad nauseum when I got it. However, I have to admit, I didn't think that it sounded very good, and that could have been the fact that the Technics deck that I had a kind of a bad cartridge. It was going bad or anything like that. Happens sometimes when you get a hold of things secondhand. Sometimes cartridges are on the end of their life, or there may be a board or something inside. And so I would got this record and I play it, and I just remembered records in the past sounding better than this. And so I would play it because I loved the music, and I'll talk about that in a second. But it wasn't for like 6 months after I bought this record that I happened to be carrying it around with me, and I went to a local shop in Arcadia, California, Brooks Burdan Limited. And if any of you are in Southern California, if you have not been to Brooks Burdan Limited, you are missing out. But I took this record into Brooks Burdan, and we played it on some insanely stupid rig. And I don't mean insanely stupid like it was a bad system. Like, it probably, if memory serves me, was a system approaching $1 million street value. And we put this lowly $9.99 record on that system, and it blew my mind. It absolutely blew my mind, and it sort of set a benchmark for me, and it kind of woke me up at that time and made me pay really close attention to making sure that I got my records set up just right. And in some way it kind of made me a bit obsessive at that time, because obviously I took this home and played it again, and it didn't sound quite as good as it did at Brooks Burdan. But because of that memory, I was able to sort of finagle my way into a performance of this album and other albums after that really resonated with me. So that is what this record did for me from a kind of audiophile or hi-fi standpoint. Now, from a song standpoint, I got to tell you, there's I wasn't feeling like melancholy or anything when I moved from Colorado to California. Quite the opposite. I was feeling pretty hopeful, and I was excited. I was going to school out there, and it was always my dream, as a kid, to move out and live in California. And so there I was. And I was going to art school, and, I had this album and a couple others. And this whole album is kind of like a graduation in a way. And John speaks a lot about, high school and the real world and wanting to get out and all of that. So the timing of this was, very, very near and dear to me. And there were just a lot of interesting songs that I really gravitated towards, like My Stupid Mouth, which is track 3 on side 1. It's kind of it's a funny song, or a cautionary, tongue-in-cheek cautionary tale, but I found myself aligning a lot with the lyrics that Mayer was writing, and that they really felt like they were representative of me. And whether or not you're a fan of kind of singer-songwriter acoustic music of that era, or you consider it super cheesy, it doesn't really matter. We've all kind of been there, And so, I would listen to things like My Stupid Mouth over and over and over again, and the Great Indoors and 3x5, and I would listen to this, and I also had it in my POS Ford Probe of a car, and I would drive, the 405 or PCH, and just really let everything kind of sink in, and this album, kind of stayed with me for the early years of college. And then about midway through college, I got involved in a relationship. And I don't think I'd listened to this album much by that point. I think I had played it out, And I had gotten into this relationship with this woman, and the song Neon on side 1 here, I made the mistake one day of, I had it on in the apartment, and we were listening and doing a bunch of other stuff, as you do, just kind of background music. And the song Neon came on, and I remember at that time thinking to myself, like, oh, this song kind of reminds me of you. And I never really quite realized that might not go over well by saying a song. The song Neon reminds you of someone, especially if that someone is right there and you're currently involved with them. So that was fun. That was a lot of fun because up until that point, I don't think I'd paid a lot of attention to Neon. And so when it came on, and I don't know what made me think or listen that closely to the lyrics that day, but I was like, oh, you're always buzzing like Neon. And yeah, at the time, the girl that I was dating very much liked to go out and party. And that was a new kind of dangerous experience, for me at that age. I think I was 20 years old. I will admit that was not something that was commonplace growing up throughout high school for me. And it wasn't. I was much more of an isolated, drama kid. I went to work and hung out with a very small group of friends. So when I got to California and, trying to reinvent myself to a certain extent, going out to house parties or, loft parties or whatever you want to call them in Los Angeles and Pasadena and the hills, I will admit I was very much outside of my element. I am still very much of a kind of quiet, small group of friends person, but I was trying, really, really hard to be, very LA. And I had this, this girlfriend that was, very LA, I don't know, very LA, but just, that was able to embrace that kind of lifestyle. And then we were listening to this record one day, and Neon came on, and I was like, oh my God, that's you. Not realizing that was not going to go over very well. So word to the wise, any of you guys out there that want to put this on, maybe don't dedicate Neon to the person you're with, unless maybe you don't want to be with them anymore. But outside of that, I really do. I think this album is still, it's arguably his most juvenile in a lot of ways. But that's to be expected. I mean, look at the age. But I still think it's actually one of his most complete and the most fun. And that's why, gosh, let's see. I would have bought this in, 2001? So we're coming up. We're coming up on 19 years that this has been in my collection. And I do take it out quite a bit from time to time and still very much enjoy it. And like I said, I think it's still among, if not one of my favorite John Mayer albums to this very day. So yeah, I think that'll about do it for this episode of my history in vinyl. John Mayer's Room for Squares. So do you guys have this album? Do you own it? What are your thoughts on Room for Squares, or what is your favorite John Mayer album? Please do let me know in the comments below. And as always, thank you guys so very much for watching. If you like this type of content, please do click that like button, and if it's not too much trouble, maybe give me a subscribe if you can. And again, special thanks to Fluence for helping to bring this series back. There will be some more episodes ahead, but thank you to Fluence for sponsoring this episode and for supporting this channel. And thank you guys all for watching. And remember, until next time, the only person that has to like the sound of your system is you. So happy listening, everybody. See you on the next video. Bye.